this was like after the whole this was during the Red Scare, right?
Right.
And they call him Mr. Civil Rights.
Yeah. But remember, Thurgood Marshall hates communists. Hates them.
Remember the NAACP?
Yeah. Oh. Yeah.
Exactly, right. So in part, remember, even in his argument in the Supreme Court, he said part of the reason we need to do this is to beat those dirty communists.
Right.
That first Brown decision that had this stirring language in it said nothing about how to do it. Or when. Nothing. When the court issued this ruling, they said, we're still working on how to do it. We'll get back to you. So the court promised a second ruling, coming soon, on implementation, on how to actually make it happen. But at this point, nothing about it. So in a way, it's remarkable that after the first Brown decision, 350 segregated school districts started integrating. That's right. Nobody came and made them do it. Which suggests, what did they want, those school boards want to do in 1953?
They wanted to.
They wanted to integrate. So why didn't they do it in 53?
Because it's an official ruling.
Yeah.
Because if they did it in 53, they'd be voted out of school board office. Because what would their opponents say? Right, he wants your kids to go to school with black people, right? But now, what can they say? Oh, the Supreme Court said we had to do it, so we're doing it. Right, but it shows you that there were moderates there all along. The 350 school districts that started integrating were all in what parts of the South?
The northern parts of the
You
South.
got it. They're on the border, right? The edges of the South.
Like Maryland, Delaware,
Maryland, Delaware, Missouri, Kentucky, Oklahoma, Kansas. Not where?
Alabama.
Right, not Alabama or Mississippi or
South
Georgia.
Carolina.
Not the Strom-Thurmond states, right? So while 350 school districts started integrating, more than 6,000 other segregated school districts did nothing. Nothing. In all of these 350 school districts where they started doing it on their own, there was no violence. There was no big protests. There was no chaos. As you can get from this picture, there was some awkwardness, some adjustment, but no big protests or violence, nothing like that. And a big part of that was because they feel like anybody was making them.
No, they did it on their own.
Not really. After those school districts had already started integrating, a year after the first Brown decision came the ruling on implementation, what became popularly known as Brown 2. So the first decision just said separate but equal, right, doesn't work for public education. This one is supposed to be about how to make it happen. In theory, just in theory, could the court have said every segregated school district must begin integrating within 6 months?
Yes.
They could have. They did not. Why not?
You want to ease it into their mind, or to test it out. Like
Maybe.
how Abe Lincoln to the proclamation, right? Was it like that? How?
Kind of. Let me ask my question differently, see if it helps, all right? Were there some members of the court who wanted to say every school district must start integrating within 6 months?
Yes.
So why didn't the ruling say that?
Because
That was
that's
all
all
unanimous decision.
So
Right.
there was no unanimous
Because
vote.
they had to get it unanimous. And in order to get it to be a unanimous decision, they had to use this language.
All the good
That integration was to begin with all deliberate speed. With all deliberate speed. What does that mean?
How
Now.
fast you want to go and how slow you want to go.
It's so vague, it can mean whatever you you want it to mean. What does Thurgood Marshall think it means? Now, right? There he is on the NAACP's desegregation special, coming down the tracks. Now, what word in there do they like to emphasize?
Deliberate.
No. Speed. Speed. What word do white Southerners like to emphasize? Deliberate. Right. As in, take your time. Think carefully. White Southerners like to say, well, we've been making steady progress in race relations ever since the Civil War. You can't rush us. We're making progress. We've been making steady progress. While we lynch people rarely compared to the way we used to. Right. So their attitude is, well, we'll get around to it. Don't ask us again. Who's the president now? Eisenhower. Right. Eisenhower was probably the most respected man in America. Why is that?
Because he was the hero of World War II.
Right, because he was the greatest war hero of World War II. Eisenhower opposed the Brown decision. Eisenhower opposed the Brown decision. Now again, he's the most respected man in the country. If he had stepped out publicly and said, we may not all agree with it, but the Supreme Court has spoken, and as Americans we must obey our institutions, and it's time for the country to change, would that have really made a difference?
Yes.
I have no doubt that would have really made a difference. And he did not do that. In a way, it's fortunate that he didn't publicly condemn the decision, because that is what he believed. He said that privately. Publicly, he just wouldn't talk about it. Like it didn't happen.
So where was he from? Like, was he from the South?
No. Eisenhower said that he didn't think that laws and court opinions could change men's hearts. And if that's the attitude of the president, right? What's really the point of having laws and court decisions?
Yeah.
Right. The point is to change society. That's why you make them. So Eisenhower showed no leadership. And the vague language from Brown too encouraged white Southerners to resist. White Southerners firmed up a strategy that they would call massive resistance. Resistance to the Supreme Court. Resistance to integration. These buttons became popular all through the South. When will we integrate?
Never.
That would be never, right. So just to walk around with a never button was telling everybody, I'm down with massive resistance. What do these folks want to do? Impeach Earl Warren, right, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. These signs went up all through the South as they pushed to try to remove Earl Warren from the Supreme Court. Something that had not been done in 150 years. They called the day of the court decision Black Monday. They spread pro-segregation propaganda like this pamphlet here, which says that America really has a choice between segregation and amalgamation. What's amalgamation?
Like a mixing of everyone.
Yeah, that would be the mixing of the races, right? So either we have segregation or it's the amalgamation of the races. You have to remember, this gets harder and harder as America becomes less and less white supremacist, which is like a great problem for me to have, right? But that to a white supremacist, after segregation, black and white people start thinking of each other as equal human beings and having sex with each other, all right? And
Straight sex.
exactly, and it's right away in their imaginations, right? And then, when a black person and a white person have a child, what's that child?
Black.
That is black, according to the way they have made-up race. And when that black child grows up and has a child with a white person, what's that child?
Black.
They are black. And what will this do to the very idea of white people within like 3 generations? It will be the death of the white race. So that's the way they see it. That's the way they see it. It is the complete destruction of this thing called white people. That's the way they see it. So they're going to resist. And one of their biggest strategies was to insist that integration was communism. To play into the Red Scare climate, right? And you can see it on these protesters' signs here. Integration is communism. Race mixing is communism. And this one down here says, don't push our children out the back door and let the communists in the front door. So that was a big strategy of massive resistance. Communist, communist, communist. What the hell's going on here? Who gave all this to the South? The Supreme Court. Right. So, and look what's coming with it. Race pollution, intermarriage, again, the destruction of white people.
In the South only.
Right.
Yeah, big argument was more about like a mix of race because
Right. It's that if we don't keep segregation, then it's going to lead to race mixing. And they had all these terms for it, race mixing and amalgamation. But yeah, people will have sex with each other because they'll think of each other like
I have
equals.
a question. They didn't like the mix of miscegenation too much. Why didn't like take the initiative or like maybe lynching women who are like punishing white men who like have sex with women and have white kids to discourage like this mixing?
White men?
Like yeah, like punish maybe like white men.
No, because remember, white men having sex with black women was part of white supremacy. Right? So remember that rape and sexual assault was part of the racial oppression. So white men having sex with black women, unless it was completely loving, in which case, that's alarming, right? But if it's sexual assault or rape, that just reinforces white power. But if a white man falls deeply in love with a black woman and they want to get married and make children, well then they're breaking laws and they're in trouble. But, if it's sexual assault, then that is part of the oppression. Yeah, it plays right into it. The Klan sprung back to life as part of massive resistance. And this is really like the third Ku Klux Klan in our class, right? The first one from way back in Reconstruction. And then remember the Klan in the 20s that was inspired by Birth of a Nation, right? And this is like the third Ku Klux Klan, the Klan of the 50s. This Klan created and devoted to preventing integration. That's why they're here, to defend segregation. Some southern school districts simply closed their public schools rather than proceed with integration. Remember Barbara Johns from Farmville? In Prince Edward County, where she was from, after the Brown decision, when they had to start integrating, Prince Edward County closed their public schools for 7 years.
Where the white, they pay for the.
For 7 years, they had no public schools.
Wow.
They created a voucher system so that white kids could get vouchers to go to private schools. And that was the beginning of school vouchers.